Hello there, welcome to saberduelgaming, where we always take the high ground, and welcome back to the RetroSaber Podcast. I have not done one of these in ages. I'd veered away to doing wrestling-themed podcasts, but let's be honest, this is a gaming channel first and foremost. I also didn't want to be doing podcasts unless I had something to talk about, and now, after a conversation with a friend recently, down pub, I actually do have something to talk about, and that thing is this. I want to talk about why VR headsets are the future of gaming, and why that future will probably never actually happen. I've been a console gamer since I was a kid. My first console was actually the original handheld Game Boy, and I steadily worked my way through a plethora of different consoles. From the Game Boy, I worked up to the SNES, from the SNES to the Nintendo 64, etc, etc. And if there was one thing that I really enjoyed back then, was looking at the massive leap forward in graphics. And when I say leap forward, I mean beyond comprehension. My uncle had a Nintendo Entertainment System, and when you looked at the graphics of them, I remember him saying, "The graphics on this will never be beaten." When I bought the Super Nintendo, the SNES, I was laughing in his face. Haha, look at these incredible graphics. These are the graphics that will never be beaten. Because how could they be? They were near cartoon perfect. And then the Nintendo 64 came out. And I remember, whilst I was waiting to get my Nintendo 64, spending hours looking at images of the new graphics. To a degree, that happened between the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube as well. But from that point on, those massive differences in graphics, in audio as well, started to decline. Now, why does that matter? Look, I get it. Gameplay is far more important than graphics, but the difference in graphics was a bit of a metaphor for where gaming was back then. From generation to generation, from console to console, we were able to take massive leaps forward. Good gameplay just comes down to whether the games designers put the effort in or not, whether they hit upon a winning formula. But those massive graphical and audio leap forwards are an indicator of where we are, and I haven't seen one of those in a long time. I've got a PlayStation 5, I'm sat right next to it as we speak, the control pad is on my lap, and I love it. I think it's a fantastic console. But if we look at graphics, if we look at the differences between the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, there isn't that much. A little bit of frame rate, a little bit of smoothness, but that's about it. I had a conversation recently with a friend, as I mentioned earlier, about this very thing. We were talking about how graphics and game visuals and audios, they're really not taking much of a leap forward anymore. He did point out, being a PC gamer himself, that, but PC games are so much better. But actually, I've seen some of those graphics, and yeah, they're really good, but they don't really veer that far forward. Certainly not to the point where you're looking at them going, oh my god, I cannot comprehend. I cannot believe that this is real. That just doesn't happen anymore. So, how do we take that next leap forward? Well, we come to the focus of this podcast. Is VR that next leap forward? Well, yes and no. First of all, VR headsets have been around for a couple of generations now. The idea that we can actually immerse ourselves via a headset, look down and see our own hands holding the weapon, our self surrounded by the environment, not just looking at it on a screen, that very well could be the next big leap forward. And because that's something quite new, it is something they'd potentially be able to improve generation by generation. But if it's been around for a while, why isn't that already the next generational leap? Well, it's quite simple, really, and it comes down to the VR headsets themselves. Now, I don't know enough about the VR headsets to be able to sit here and debate which ones are the best, which ones are good, which ones are bad, the pros and cons of them. That's not really what I'm here to discuss. That's not really what I'm here to focus on. I'm actually here to discuss the problem behind the concept of how headsets are done. And that comes down to one simple thing: console exclusivity. Let's pan back a little bit. VR headsets right now are looked at as a peripheral. Okay, that's fair enough. I have my PlayStation 5, and I'm focusing on the PlayStation 5 because that's what I have. I know there are other headsets out there with different software, etc., but let's focus on the PlayStation 1. I have my PlayStation 5, I have the pad, I have my games. There's always a wide range of peripherals, and there always has been. You used to be able to get steering wheels so that you could drive when you're doing your driving games, and it feel a little bit more immersive. You had the light guns so that with a number of your games you could actually point and shoot. Peripherals have been a part of gaming for ages, and so it makes sense that a VR headset would be looked at that. But there's one problem with peripherals. Most peripherals, once you're moving on to the next console, they stop working. They're not useful anymore. And, that's understandable. You expect that. When I've got my PlayStation 2, my PlayStation 4, and I buy that light gun for £30, and I buy that steering wheel for £40 or whatever, if I'm going to get enough use out of it while I have that console, that's worthwhile, right? I've got a couple of racing games, I've got a couple of shooting games, but I've only lost 30, 40, maybe £50. A VR headset can be easily £400 plus. That's not a peripheral, and it never should be looked at as one. There's something else associated with your console that it is much more closely affiliated with. The television. Imagine if every time you bought a console, you had to buy a new television to play those games on. PlayStation 4's packed in. You're looking at getting the PlayStation 5? Well, I hope you're ready to buy a brand new PlayStation television so you can play it on. That would seem ridiculous, wouldn't it? You would never sign up for that. You would never agree to that. Nor should you, by the way. What if you don't decide to get the PlayStation? What if you decide to jump over to the other side and do Xbox? What if a whole new company is created within the next 24, 48 hours that makes different consoles, and you want to be able to plug it into your television and play it? You're never going to sign up for a PlayStation exclusive television. No, television is basically the thing we plug our console in so that we can watch it. That is what VR headsets should be. As it stands right now, they will not do that because Sony wants to make their exclusive VR headset. Guess what, Sony? It's not going to work. They'll sell. There's enough people out there that will randomly buy them. But the fact that there's so few VR games, and I mean VR games, top level ones. I don't mean these random ones that they pump out so that they've got enough things for you to play on release the VR headset. I mean a brand new Resident Evil game just for VR. A brand new Star Wars and Star Trek game just for VR. Yes, there is Star Wars and Star Trek games, but they're not good games. They're kind of immersive novelties. Because why would you sink that much money in it when so few people actually have one? And why do so few people have one? Because why am I going to spend that much money on something that I can only use when I'm playing on my PlayStation? That I can only use while I have this console? Let's look at it a different way. What if instead every company could make VR headsets? Different quality, I grant you. Sony would probably make really good ones, as would LG and lots of other companies out there, Philips, etc. But these VR headsets were usable with Sky or Netflix. They're usable for your PlayStation, but also for your Xbox. They're usable for you to access the internet. They're just an independent device that you can plug your games into. Now, PlayStation, Sony, they could still sell a particular little bit of software, maybe the hand pieces for £60, £70 even, so that you have that range of movement. But people wouldn't have to waste hundreds and hundreds of pounds on a VR headset that is eventually just going to sit on the side or get sold on eBay for £100 less than they bought it for. Now, people are much more likely to invest in it. I've looked at the VR headsets multiple times, and the massive amount of money has been something that's put me off, but it's not been the main thing. I will sink huge amounts of money on something if I know I'm going to get value out of it. I know I'm going to be able to use it for a long time, and it's going to be enjoyable and worthwhile. But I know those VR headsets, they are going nowhere. I will play a couple of Star Wars and Star Trek games on them, and then it's sitting next to the television. I might, for the novelty, sit on the sofa and watch a film on it. But films aren't being made in VR. Why? Because what's the point of making them in VR? People don't have VR headsets. Once everyone had big widescreen televisions and stereo sounds, DVDs and stuff were coming out to make sure they worked that same way. Wouldn't have been much point when everyone had basic block televisions. You make VR headsets that can be used as a television, not Sony exclusive, not Microsoft, not Oculus Rift, just a VR headset. And you play and download and access anything you want on it, in the same way you can use your television. That would allow games to really start focusing on, man, let's make everything a little bit VR. I'm not saying everything has to be VR exclusive. In fact, I would be against that, because a lot of people, VR headsets are going to cause problems. I'm epileptic myself, so I know the risks of photosensitivity. I know people will have motion sickness. There's also other risks, I'm sure, that come with it. But everything could have some range of VR, or certainly many more games could be VR, or have VR scenes. Lots of games you have first-person scenes anyway. You could literally make those VR. And all of a sudden, we might see leap-ups between consoles. Is that going to be the way forward? Well, there's a massive problem with that. Companies like to keep the monies for themselves. Sony, they're probably not going to say, yeah, go on, just someone else make the headsets and we'll just... But what if they just made sure their headsets were the best? Look, Sony, you make some really good stuff, so why not just make sure that your VR headsets are the best ones of a reasonable cost, but make them so that people can play on their Xboxes too? Why not? Then all of a sudden, the Xbox owners are buying your stuff too. Make sure people can just use it the same as a television, and that it's not just going to be disposable within one generation of consoles. Someone could have the same television for like 3 consoles, potentially, if they bought a relatively up-to-scale one when they first bought it, and they've kept it in good nick, and they're not too concerned about it being the latest thing all along. That console, that television could last you 3 consoles. Certainly the television I'm looking at right now has lasted me at least 2, maybe 3, if I'm thinking back. So, why not do the same with VR headsets? I don't know. A lot of people aren't even particularly fond of VR, and truth be told, I've only really used it once or twice. I thought the novelty of it was really cool, but at the same time, it was far too awkward. I felt I had to stand up and move around, and I just wanted to sit down and play a game casually. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's why VR will never really swoop off. Maybe it's just too much of a novelty. Maybe that is just a peripheral, and that's all it's ever going to be. But if that's the case, the next generation of consoles, what's the point? What really is going to be the difference between the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 6, or 7, or 8? We could move towards photorealistic graphics, but who the hell actually wants that? People look at video games and go, whoa, that's stunning. No one looks around real life and thinks that. Because we don't want video games to be realistic, to be photorealistic. We want them to be fantastical. And if we start veering towards realistic, kind of loses the novelty. Either way, it'll still reach a point where it's meh, no difference from one console to the next. I really haven't seen that much for a while anyway, so yeah, I don't know. It's just a thought. I think the VR headset trend, it may not ever be the big move forward, but I do think taking them away from being console specific and making them no different to your mobile phone or your television, that you can just use it to access Google and go and look at and do whatever you want. To be able to use it for your games console or your retro console. Hell, even if it's not fully immersive VR, I can still plug my Nintendo Switch into it, my SNES Mini into it. Few adapters and we're sorted. Might at least give us something different to explore. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it, and this has been a relatively short podcast. So let's take a look and see if we've got any questions that we can answer while we're here. Okay, so just a few questions that I know I get asked a lot in my channel. I'm going to throw a few of them out there while we're here and try and answer them. Number 1, can we add you on PlayStation? Simple answer, no. Sorry. I am more than happy to talk and engage with everybody. Hell, if you do a gaming channel, I will even try and subscribe back to you and follow and engage and comment on your videos when I can. However, adding someone, there's a degree of privacy involved there. If you hear of people that I play online with or I have already added, it is because to some degree or another I've gotten to know them in real life or I already knew them in real life. So that's an easy answer to that one. Another one that ties into that is people saying, can we play insert game here together? Again, for the same reason, the same answer. But please don't take that personally. It's just not something I feel comfortable with. In the same way I don't show my face on camera, it's just a way of protecting myself. But I promise I am still happy to engage with you. I will check out your channels if you do anything. Feel free to come in. You know, if you're a subscriber of mine and you're like, hey Saber, would you mind coming and checking out this video? Generally, the moment I finish that stream, I will come and check it out, put a comment on for you and still engage. So I hope that's okay. Another question I get, which ties into that, is will you ever do a face reveal? Chances are probably not. It's an option. It's possible. Way down the line, I could potentially do that, but it's highly unlikely. I have a very professional job that I do, and I work within the healthcare setting. And so what I do online, what I do on my channel, I tend to try and keep it completely separate to that. So it's not something I'm ever considering really doing. I do know that showing your face on your channel massively shoots it into the stratosphere. You get more subscribers, you get more views, you get monetized. And I know that's probably something I'm going to struggle with because I don't show my face. But it's just the way I want it to be. And hopefully people can respect that. And the last question, which I've been asked a lot recently, do I think GTA 6 will ever bloody come out? Stroke, do I think it will be delayed again? Well, it already has been delayed again. Quite frankly, it's bordering on the point where I'll believe it when I see it. Look, it's going to come out. And I do think it'll be out at some point this year. I'm probably not even going to get it when it first comes out because it's massively overpriced. But yeah, look, it's coming out. it wouldn't surprise me if it was delayed again. And at this rate, I'm beginning to question if GTA 7 will even come out in my lifetime. But hey, look, GTA 6, they're clearly putting a lot of work and effort into it. I would rather play a delayed game that is absolutely amazing than a really crap game that comes out on time. So we'll just have to keep waiting. I know someone commented recently that if you pre-order the game and it doesn't get released, then technically they're taking your money. And I understand the logic behind that, but the reality is, when you pre-order, there's all kinds of I accept contracts in there that include the delays, etc. So, Eli, that one's for you. I'm sorry, mate. They're allowed to do that. Anyway, listen, it's been great to do another one of these RetroSaber podcasts. I'm sorry it's been a short one, but there wasn't really much else to say on the topic that I really wanted to talk about. And hopefully the few questions at the end have given people some answers. Other than that, I just want to say thank you to everyone who continues to watch my streams, watch my shorts, and watch my videos. Thank you to everyone that has continued to stay subscribed to my channel as well. I hope you like this. I hope you're interested. And please comment below what your thoughts are on this subject matter was. Have you ever used VR? Do you like it? Do you think it's got legs? Do you think this idea would really set it forward? Or do you think VR is always just going to be a novelty? Other than that, guys, have a great day. Whatever you're doing, take the high ground.